Welcome back to the show, everybody. Check out these headlines. Prometheum listing Ethereum on their platform, but is it a security or not? You're going to find out today. Chris Larson in the news, the best CBDC technology, and they're saying it's not the XRP ledger. Who's saying it? We're going to prove it to you. We're going to show it to you. I don't know if they proved it yet. Christian Carlo is going to talk about wholesale, retail, CBDCs, but when? He'll tell us. Ripple partner news, SEC versus Ripple. We got so much for you to see. You're going to want every single bit of it. Just roll the beautiful intro. Here we go.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. You can follow us on Twitter and YouTube for exclusive content. Right now, $1.79 trillion market cap for cryptocurrency. The market is up 3.2% in the last 24 hours. 44,700 plus for Bitcoin right now. 2,400 plus for Ethereum. 96.1 billion plus market cap for Tether. Number 6 spot is XRP right now. It's been going back and forth. If you remember yesterday, it fell to number 7, but we're at 51 cents right now, and we're up 1.1 on the 24-hour for XRP and up 3.7 on the 7-day. Range of price very quickly between 0.5015 on the bottom, 0.5167 on the top. We'll look at TA before we get out of here. I do want to tell you there are some remarkable specials and deals going on right now at Miles Franklin for gold and silver. Any kind you want, they got it. But you got to use two things. The email, info@milesfranklin.com, and then the most important part in the subject box to get the best price, dig gold, D-I-G gold. That's what you want to put in there. No question about it, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to want to do that. Now let's get started right here. Ashley Prosper shares with us that Steven Nureyev has made some conversations between himself and Ethereum Joseph Lubin public. Crooked Joe talks about expunging old communications from Slack, destroying evidence before any SEC investigator starts. And this is it right here, the exchange here, where they talk about Steven Nureyev tells him, he was consulting and advising him at the time, that this Slack one, in all likelihood, if they brought charges, they would be able to subpoena these records. Joseph Lubin acknowledged, yeah, and Steve Nureyev says, so one way I thought, Joe and I talked a little bit, but you know, about like every 90 days, 91st day dropping off of Slack, and I don't know how important that is for the business. Joseph Lubin responds, we don't know how. That's actually something Taylor can look into because you have some contact with Slack developers or just working on. Taylor Goering responds back, just working on. Joseph Lubin says, just working on. So maybe we could talk to them and find out if there's a facility for expunging old communications. So much for being transparent, Joseph Lubin, right? Every time I read this, I think back to when there was that conference, and I've highlighted it before, where Brad Garlinghouse is sitting on stage with Joe Lubin, and then he says, we're a private company too, and we've been transparent. How come you're not transparent, basically? I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what he was doing, was calling him out. So, look, we know that this has not been handled properly, right? We know this, and so does the SEC. We'll see what comes of it. But take a look at this, because Prometheum, the only U.S. registered crypto platform, picks Ether as its first product to list. However, how is it going to list it? Security or not security? Well, Prometheum claims Gary's little coveted golden child, Aaron Kaplan, and Wan Zhang, which is tied to the CCP in China. Well, he has quite the affinity for these China-tied projects, doesn't he? Prometheum calls Ether a digital asset security with the launch of their custody services. And coming down here, Prometheum, one of the few companies to have approval from the United States financial regulator as a special purpose broker-dealer, which is the coveted license nobody can get unless you get it from Gary. And apparently one of the qualifications is you got to have ties to the Communist Party in China, because they got it. They got the license and they got the connections. So apparently that's how you do it. So Prometheum suggested that Ether would be treated as a security for custody services on its platform. The firm received approval from the U.S. Financial Industry Regulatory Authority in May of 2023. Obviously, Gary Gensler has had problems coming out and speaking openly about this. He sidestepped questions about whether Ether is a security or not in April of 2023. But Aaron Kaplan from Prometheum feels that he's got it best lined up as it's a digital asset security. You know, when you look at all the different projects that have been launched, the assembly line, the token factory that was created on top of Ethereum with a fake free pass, right? Think of it. I'm actually glad that the XRP ledger held off on smart contracts. I'm actually glad that the XRP ledger and Ripple have held back on NFTs and other projects like this, because it would clutter the legal ramifications, I believe. No one's told me that. I just believe that, you know, that is the more cautious route. Look how hard this case has been just with XRP Ledger and Ripple in the state that it's currently in. Could you imagine how much more difficult and intertwined and mixed up this would all be if there was as much jumping off of the network as it is on Ether? We played this yesterday, but you need the first 35 seconds of this.
Okay, how do we compete with China? How do we keep up? And, you know, till now, frankly, U.S. regulators have actually helped China by officially giving clarity to the two protocols effectively controlled by Chinese miners, Bitcoin and Ethereum.
That's it. It's 14 seconds. Chris knows the truth. We know the truth. This isn't maxi talk. This is real talk. This is adulting time, right? And anybody doesn't want to acknowledge those truths doesn't understand, as Chris goes on to say later in this clip, we're in a tech cold war. Why is the SEC, Gary Gensler specifically, says that Bitcoin's not a security? We know that it's largely controlled by Chinese mining. And then when they kicked the mining out of China, the Chinese miners came to America and started the same company. And they sell everything. They don't hold any Bitcoin. They sell everything every day. Every day at the end of the day, they sell it no matter what the price is. Sounds like a money laundering operation to me. Then there's this guy, Chom.com, David Chom. He says, I happen to own the best CBDC technology out there, according to the BIS, he says.
I happen to own the best CBDC technology that's out there. Thank you, Bank for International Settlement, for proving that it can do all the transactions in Switzerland 3 times over in real time. That report was just released last week, right? So if you look at what the financial system, you know, the Bank for International Settlement and central banks are doing, and many commercial banks, they built this CBDC technology for wholesale and retail and so forth. That's the perfect building block for better than money. So they, in their own defense, have created the seeds of their own destruction. That's a perfect thing to build it out of. And I happen to own the best CBDC technology that's out there. Thank you, Bank for International Settlement, for proving that it can do all the transactions in Switzerland 3 times over in real time.
So he's very excited about it, and he doesn't mind telling you. You know, if you don't believe it, ask him. He'll tell you. No, I'm kidding. Look, I'm sure it's obviously everything he says it is. I think the delineation we want to hold on to here is what David points out, because I don't know much about this guy, but obviously David does. He says he sees central bank digital currencies primarily as a tool for retail payments. David says, I see CBDCs primarily as a tool for wholesale settlement. I love hearing this delineation very quickly here, and let me expound why. I love this because I don't want central bank digital currencies to be retail facing products. Period. Full stop. I don't want that. We have a 2-tier financial system, but let me tell you why I think that central banks would agree with David here. if you keep the wholesale back-end settlement market strictly limited to digital central bank digital currencies that only each other's governments and central banks use, that's how they're going to stay in power. That's what I believe. I think because we know we have a two-tiered financial system, wholesale back end, retail front end, this is how they remain powerful and relevant. And if you keep the CBDCs in wholesale settlement on the back end, no matter what you allow the proliferation of private stable coins and other things under some kind of prudential regulation and global cooperation, we all know what needs to happen. But if you do that, then no matter what issuance of a certain kind of a stable coin or synthetic CBDC that's issued, it's all going to come home to that back end wholesale settlement, which is back to the digital government dollars, and that keeps them relevant. So that's what I take from David's point there, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I don't think that I am. I think that's one of the vital things that central banks probably realize at this point. And speaking to that, and the ones that have retail-facing CBDCs are just those countries that are like, listen, we run shit, and people do what we tell them to do, like China, right? And that's not favorable at my house. So take a listen to here. This is the Honorable Chris Giancarlo, who's going to lay it down, and boy, he's going to be on stage at XRP Las Vegas. If you haven't got your tickets, make sure you do.
And this is happening all around us. Today, well over 100 foreign nations, representing over 95% of global GDP, are exploring various forms of central bank digital currency, or CBDC. A BIS survey suggests that by 2030, there could be 15 retail CBDCs intended for everyday transactions and 9 wholesale CBDCs used for transactions between financial institutions. At the same time, global stablecoin usage continues to increase dramatically. Stablecoins settled over 11 trillion in on-chain transactions in 2022, almost surpassing the payment volume of Visa and reaching 14% of the volume settled by ACH and 1% settled by Fedwire. The supply of stablecoins has grown from less than 3 billion 5 years ago to over 125 billion today. And of course, decentralized digital networks of value like Bitcoin and Ethereum continue to grow in notional value, computing power, and distributed ownership. Thus, whether or not any one country deploys central bank digital currencies, our fellow men and women will be dealing with CBDCs, stablecoins, and crypto in the century to come. That sometimes fashionable debate between CBDCs or stablecoins or crypto is a false choice. The future is all of the above.
There you have it right there. And I cannot wait for all of us to hear the conversation that we're going to hear at XRP Las Vegas. And don't forget, Chris will also be at the Future of Digital Assets Benefit Dinner. Keep an eye out for that. You're going to want to get a ticket to that before that runs out. That is going to be incredible with a fireside chat and maybe some other things happening there. And plenty of other guests there as well, including Brad Garlinghouse. Get your ticket for that on the XRP Las Vegas site. Some real new old partner Ripple news very quickly here with FinFan posted a 3-year retrospective working with Ripple. And you can imagine as they go and look back on the 3 years there, the journey and the common goals, the suggestive partnerships, you find pretty much the same kind of conversation happening around the world. In Vietnam here, the same cooperation came down to regulatory clarity. You guessed it, right? So what they did was FinFan solved the problems by partnering with a company called AAA as a gateway facilitating XRP through the Vietnamese dollar. And this is important information for understanding how what was called on-demand liquidity works with FinFan and in Vietnam. And it also bears a resemblance here to SBI Remit because the use of AAA seems to have begun September 2023. Hard to find dates. This is when the announcement first appeared. If so, it was announced a few days after SBI Asia announced their move into Southeast Asia. Coincidence? We don't know. However, AAA is a digital payments company headquartered in Singapore and founded by Thunes, founder, board member, I think it's Eric Barbie, who also expressed interest in using JPM coin if he could get a hold of it if it's ever available. But the summary here is just really that FinFan, proud of their association with Ripple and have addressed XRP regulatory problems in the regions they're currently in by partnering with a new regulatory crypto gateway known as AAA a few days after SBI Remit announced it was also expanding services into Vietnam. Now, those things have not kicked off yet, but nevertheless, you're seeing the pathway there set up and cleared, a runway being cleared for that to take off in fashion. So we'll keep an eye on that as well. And keeping an eye on things, we got to keep an eye on this case. As we know, the federal judge has ordered Ripple Labs to produce additional information around its institutional sales. Ripple filed a motion to oppose this request last month, calling the documents irrelevant. However, the motion was granted. So we will see what comes of it. But Stuart Al-Arati very quickly exposes the contrasting views between the SEC and the Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, who just testified on cryptocurrency regulation. Now we have the SEC, which is a market regulator, which sits beneath. He doesn't like hearing it. But Gary Gensler's SEC sits beneath the U.S. Treasury because they're a market regulator. The Treasury is a prudential regulator. Don't believe that. It's still true. Stuart Al-Arati exposes the fact that Gary Gensler says there's no ambiguity. There is 100% clarity. Everyone needs to come in and register. And the prudential regulator that sits above Mr. Gensler, Janet Yellen, pleaded with Congress to pass clarity and legislation for crypto assets, stable coins, and the rest of it, because she knows there isn't any. Now think of that contradiction. Now let's come back to the Ripple versus SEC case, because it hasn't stopped the SEC from moving forward in multiple cases, whether it's Grayscale, Coinbase, Debtbox, which they just dropped, right? Or the Ripple case. They have no problem embarrassing themselves. It is just unreal. But Ashley Prosper here says, I thought of 7 possible Ripple ways the case could end. 1, Ripple SEC reach settlement, case ends anytime. 2, Ripple and the SEC accept remedies ruling from judges and no one files an appeal, case ends by the end of 2024. Ripple and or the SEC appeal to Second Circuit after remedies phase. Second Circuit agrees with Judge Torres. No one files an appeal to the Supreme Court of the United States. Case ends 25-26. 4, Ripple and or the SEC appeal to the Second Circuit after remedies phase. Second Circuit agrees with Judge Torres. Ripple and or the SEC file appeal to the Supreme Court of the United States. Case would end 26-27. Number 5, Ripple and or the SEC appeal to the Second Circuit after remedies phase. Second Circuit finds fault in ruling and remands back to Judge Torres. Both sides accept a new ruling from Judge Torres. Case ends between 25-26. Number 6, Ripple and the SEC appeal the Second Circuit after remedies phase. Second Circuit remands back to Judge Torres. One or both parties do not accept the new ruling from Judge Torres and appeals again. The Second Circuit agrees with Judge Torres and no one appeals to the Supreme Court of the United States. Case ends 26-27. Or number 7, Ripple and or the SEC appeal to the Second Circuit after remedies phase. Second Circuit remands back to Judge Torres. One or both parties do not accept the new ruling from Judge Torres and appeals again. The Second Circuit agrees with Judge Torres. One or both parties appeal to Supreme Court. Case ends 27-28. Now, you guys know where I'm at. I'd like to see this thing wrap up anytime, but you know what? I've always believed that this goes to the Supreme Court, and it's a way of keeping a legal dog leash on a new form of money that just may end up, once these automated market makers are in place and they show that they can draw enough liquidity to function properly the way they should, and maybe, just maybe, XRP gets deemed as a stablecoin category because of the stabilization mechanism of the AMMs and liquidity pools. I don't know the answer. But I know if it goes that route, we'll probably see some form and fashion of this case remain while it takes off in that light. And the reason I would feel that way is because there'd be a legal dog leash over top of this in case something went really wrong as you're introducing a new money to a world that desperately needs it. Target $1.130. The emergence of green W pattern in XRP is catching attention, presenting both possibility and credibility. I'm going to work with some flashcards when I get done today, ladies and gentlemen. However, the completion, again, they're going to be very good flashcards. They're going to work with multiple syllable words. I'm going to be very good by tomorrow. The second part of the W pattern may exhibit characteristics of either green or blue dotted pattern. You can see that we could have a couple outcomes headed our way if everything goes the way the technical analysts are seeing, and $1 to $1.25, $1.30 could be in our near-term future. It's not financial advice from me, him, or anyone else. It's just our digital perspectives. And now we're headed into the freedom zone, ladies and gentlemen, and you are going to want to see what's going on here as we have a Chinese descendant who tells us exactly where the West is going, and you're not going to like it, but you need to know it. I'll catch all of you in the freedom zone. Come on in.